to the first two. I call it Choiceless Awareness, although it is also known by many other names, including Pure Awareness, Open Awareness, and the method of no method. In this approach, you pay attention to everything you encounter in your lives, without favoritism or judgment. There is no single focus of attention, not even on the breath. Nothing is discarded. From the seemingly most mundane car ride to the store, to the seemingly most powerful insight on the cushion, you are aware of what is happening. Awareness is your approach and your refuge. The inclusion of this third contemplation is the most unusual element of this book. Certainly, it is the one that might be most surprising to longtime practitioners of breath awareness, and understandably so, for it includes the option to drop the breath as special and to take refuge in awareness itself. Paradoxically, choiceless awareness is the first practice I learned, even before I studied Buddhism. Now, more than 40 years of practice and teaching led me to include it as an essential element in this three-phase method of the full awareness of breathing. I did not intentionally construct a three-phase approach. Rather, it evolved naturally from many years of practice and from observation of other yogis walking on a similar path. 3 Steps to Awakening attempts to coherently describe this evolution to get more yogis who use the beauty of simple breath awareness as a mainstay in their practice, and to all seekers of wisdom and compassion. Breath awareness and the spirit of inquiry. My own turn to the Buddha's teachings was only possible because the first sutta I heard, the Kalama Sutta, differed from everything else I had read or known from my own upbringing. The first chapter of this book takes a look at the sutta, for it is the basis for taking a fresh look at our understanding of the full awareness of breathing. It is the discourse where the Buddha urges his listeners, the Kalamas, a group of seekers in 5th century BCE India, to challenge all teachings given to them, even the Buddha's own. Have you learned that yet? There's a lot of baloney out there. Years ago, a wonderful Hindu teacher, Swami Chinmayananda, who taught me the Vedanta, said, "The longer the beard, the bigger the fake." And he himself had a beard that almost touched the floor. Yes, the Buddha tells us to take the counsel of the wise. We would be foolish to overlook their immeasurable knowledge and skills. But he also tells us to test the teachings in the fire of our own lives. Listen to them, weigh them, and investigate them. It is for each of us to understand, why do I suffer so much? How do I relate to the world around me? Or, what brings joy to life? This spirit of inquiry is a touchstone for someone like me, a proud descendant from a long line of skeptics. It is resonant in today's world where so many of us share a wariness of strict orthodoxy in religion and political systems. And without the Kalama Sutta, I would not have known the freedom to investigate new approaches to the Sutta on the full awareness of breathing, both in my earlier book, Breath by Breath, and in this current one. Retracing Steps. 40 years ago, my first meditation teacher, Jiddu Krishnamurti, did not teach us use of the breath. He practiced and taught choiceless awareness only. I spent several days with him when he visited Boston in the 1960s, and when he was about to return to Europe. I asked him for homework. He said, "Put your own house in order. Start paying attention to how you actually live." When I heard the word "actually," it burned right through me. Then he repeated, "How you actually live. Not how you think you live. Not how you should live. Not how your parents told you to live. Moment by moment, how do you walk, sit, eat? In other words, nothing is unworthy of attention." After Krishnamurti's death in 1986, I continued with his student, Vimala Thakur, a woman of profound understanding and wisdom. Occasionally, Vimala would make a concession, saying, "Okay, follow the breath, but you will not need it as a support for more than a few days. Then just observe what's happening in the mind and body." From day one, working with Krishnamurti and Vimalaji encouraged a practice of pure awareness and a sincere interest in learning about every aspect of life. They trusted awareness and the interest in learning that came out of awareness to do the entire job. I was powerfully drawn to the utter simplicity and naturalness of just being myself and watching without judgment and learning from whatever was observed. To this day, if I had to label myself, I would say I'm a minimalist. I like to find the simplest and most direct way to live, especially in human affairs. Of course, since it was my first meditation instruction, I did not know any other. In time, though, a gap emerged between my love of pure awareness and my ability to use it effectively. Largely, this was because I lacked a firm foundation in concentration. Years of formal education, the worship of conceptual knowledge, plus 10 years of university teaching blocked the gateway to simple, open awareness. Or as my first Buddhist teacher, the Zen master Seong San Sunim put it, too many thinking. Knowing that I needed more methods, forms, and teachers than Krishnamurti's approach provided, I attended my first session, an intense Zen meditation session. And from then on, with many twists and turns, I remained within the Buddha's fold. But I never relinquished the practice of pure awareness learned from Krishnamurti and Vimala Thakur. As my first session was followed by 10 years of intensive, much-loved practice in Korean, Vietnamese, and Japanese Zen, I developed an even deeper and unshakable love of the simplicity of just seeing. Teachings on breath awareness. My journey with mindful breathing as my companion officially began in 1982 when I was introduced to Vipassana, or insight meditation, as taught in the Theravada tradition, mainly in Thailand, Cambodia, Burma, and India. Typically, on the first days of a retreat, teachers encouraged yogis to take up breath awareness as an exclusive object of attention. Its purpose was limited to concentration and to calming the mind. When the mind became steady, it was referred to as samadhi. This practice prepared you for Vipassana, looking directly into the nature of the entire mind-body process and seeing the lawfulness of the Dharma at work. Here the term Dharma means the natural truth of the universe, expressed in the Buddha's teachings. I inherited, practiced, and eventually taught that interpretation of breath awareness until I had the good fortune to meet Bhikkhu Vimalu, a German monk who had lived and practiced for many years in both Burma and Thailand. He corrected my limited understanding by teaching me that breath awareness was intended to help create a complete practice that included both samadhi and vipassana. That was news to me. He informed me of a sutta that laid out this teaching in a clear and logical style. Read it, he said. And so I discovered the Anapanasati Sutta. Thanks to Bhikkhu Vimalu, I came to understand breath awareness as a complete practice that can take you from calming the mind to knowing the mind-body process, including feelings and mind states, and finally to insight and liberation. This practice of breath awareness came so central to my life that I sought out its master practitioners. Due to my good fortune, I worked closely with the great Vietnamese Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, and with the venerated Thai master, Ajahn Buddhadasa. Further on, I learned yet more about the Anapanasati Sutta from Thanissaro Bhikkhu, a monk in the lineage of Ajahn Lee. To my fascination and occasional bewilderment, I learned that these three extraordinary teachers read the same sutta, occasionally followed identical translations, yet understood the meaning of the words very differently. To add to the mix, I realized that in my earlier years as a practitioner in Soto Zen, a few teachers taught Shinkantaza, which is a practice of just sitting, breathing, and awareness. Though no reference was made to the Anapanasati Sutta, looking back, I realized that full breath awareness existed in Zen too, but it was not called by that name. Each teacher understood Anapanasati as an approach to liberation, yet taught the sutta in distinctly different ways, and each interpretation was authentic, useful, and effective. Correct. Over time, I came to believe that even if the Buddha were to come back, he might not offer a one-way only interpretation because he was a practitioner of skillful means. He varied his approach and words depending on the student. The depth of the sutta's aliveness and pliability became unmistakable to me. Its organic nature makes it relevant for the problems we face in our complex world, just as it did for the Buddha's world more than 2,500 years ago. Simultaneously, I realized that I had practiced the same number of years as many of the teachers of these suttas. These insights led me to consider putting in my own 2 cents, and so I did. First in Breath by Breath, published in 1998, and now again in 3 Steps to Awakening. The condensed method of full awareness of breathing. The condensed method of 2 contemplations, rather than 16, sounds new to most of us, but I didn't invent it. Years ago, despite his method of instructing students to move sequentially through the entire sutta, Ajahn Buddhadasa strongly suggested that a contemporary yogi, without sufficient time to carefully progress through each of the 16 contemplations, might benefit from the condensed method, without losing the essence of the teachings. The great Thai lay meditation teacher, Upasika Ki, also offers in her writings and discourses a guide to the condensed practice of breathing meditation. If you can become skilled at looking and knowing in this way, she writes, you'll be stuck with the inconstancy, stressfulness, and not selflessness of yourself, and you'll meet with the genuine Dharma. The earlier work, Breath by Breath, devoted only a brief chapter to these 2 teachers' approaches to the condensed method. At that time, I perceived its benefits, but only partially. 15 years later, I am a convert, but it is my own experience and that of many yogas that has convinced me of the immeasurable value of the condensed methods. Clearly, the shorter method is in better sync with our lives as lay practitioners in a quickly spinning world, for it offers the core of the entire Anapanasati Sutta in a far more direct and economical manner. Also, because I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, an academic and professional hub, I've seen many yogis approach the 16 contemplations as if they were working on a PhD thesis, one that required extensive comparative analysis. This purely intellectual approach, useful for scholars, often impedes the liberating potential of the yogi's actual meditation practice. Now and then, I encounter yogis drawn to move through all 16 in ways that genuinely reduce their suffering. Of course, I encourage them to pursue this method, and I encourage you to take the time to read the full sutta and to pay attention to your own response. As you will hear me say throughout, each yogi responds to a particular approach in his or her own way. For both teacher and student, the choice of methods remains skillful means. No one size fits all. But please do not think of the condensed method as Vipassana light. As you practice with it on the cushion, at home, or in the office, you will see that I am showing you yet another way to use breath awareness to accomplish what the Buddha taught. How to live skillfully in a world of impermanence and change. The breath accompanies you the full length of life's road. You learn about the body, feelings, mental formations, the mind itself, and, finally, the lawfulness of impermanence and emptiness of the substantial self. The condensed method of breathing is a practice of letting go into freedom. Full circle back to beginnings. Choiceless awareness. Over the course of 40 years, my path led me from Krishnamurti and choiceless awareness to a decade of Zen, to 30 years of insight practice and breath awareness. Paradoxically, as my insight practice evolved, breath awareness became the springboard for not needing the breath as a targeted object of attention. This was not a deliberate movement on my part. Without effort or conscious intention, awareness itself, my initial practice, emerged more strengthened and intact than ever. Apparently, the methods I'd learned over many years, koans, mantras, yoga, pranayama, mental noting, and of course breath awareness, helped develop a foundation to more skillfully practice the method of no method. I want to emphasize the non-contrived nature of this process. Strange as it may sound, it simply happened. The breath faded as a prominent component of my practice. Quite naturally, when I sat down to meditate, I loved having nothing to do but sit and learn. Put another way, it was as if the breath itself told me, with a slight Brooklyn accent, "Hey, Larry, look, I've carried you this far. I'm always here for you, but right now, your awareness is not too bad. Actually, you're able to just be aware. You no longer have to start practice by intentionally using the breath as an anchor or friend." I have traveled full circle back to where I had begun meditation, the practice of choiceless awareness. By this time, though, I had experienced lengthy and intensive practice in Asia and the West, on the cushion and in daily life. I was equipped to make awareness my home. Until now, I didn't keep track of these gradual shifts in my meditative journey. I did not articulate them to others or even to myself. I continued to teach Anapanasati, but my passion was choiceless awareness. As a result, I neglected or slighted the emphasis previously placed on the primacy of the breath. Fortunately, many longtime students perceived the change in my teaching style. Several started to badger me with the questions, "Why have you backed off from teaching breath awareness?" They pointed out that though I welcomed yogi-initiated discussions of the method, I did not put full energy into it. They also observed that many students attempted to practice pure awareness, but their questions showed they weren't ready for it. In essence, these observant, long-time yogis asked, why completely drop a tried and true stage of practice that had benefited countless yogis? As I listened, they reminded me that they had started with me years ago using Anapanasati as a full-fledged practice. They intimately knew the benefits of learning this approach. In fact, some of their practices, too, had unfolded quite naturally, without effort or intent, into awareness in and of itself. They use breath awareness from time to time, but no longer in the singular and direct manner of their earlier practice with
А вот этот
Anapanasati.
большой мост с веревками, его не будет, да?
Кто это будет смотреть? Кому это интересно тоже?
Я буду смотреть.
For me, too, breath awareness ushered these students to the point where they could just be aware, period. Listening to them, one image that came to mind was that of the pole vault. At first, the athlete needs a pole to propel him or herself to a great height. At a certain point, the athlete has to release the pole and just jump. To varying degrees, this happens to many meditators. Of course, for many others, it does not. From the Buddha's time up until today, some yogis have sustained the practice of breath awareness and remained happy with it, deepening their wisdom and compassion. Clearly, it is not an inferior method. Your individual temperament, degree of practice experience, access to teachers, and a host of other factors determine the particular Dharma path you follow, all lead to the same place, to diminished suffering in your life and in the world. What now? Nothing that follows in this book claims to be the new, improved way to meditate, or the exclusively correct one. Far from it. All I can say with total certainty is that I know the benefits of these teachings for myself, and for many other yogis, each of us utilizing them according to our nature and understanding. I suggest that you read the book in its entirety before deciding whether to use these teachings. After you read and reflect on the text, if you are interested, start with the first method,